Welcome to the Grace Story Podcast, where inspiring stories are brought to life. This podcast is made possible by Grace College and Seminary, located on the shores of Winona Lake in the great state of Indiana. I'm your host, Dr. Drew Flam. This is the Grace Story Podcast. Today on the podcast, we have the gentlemen behind Cable Bullet, Dan and Chris, both Grace alums, both men who have been engaged with Grace for a long time and both born in different countries. And so we're going to hear all of that today on the Grace Story Podcast. So Dan, I'm going to start with you. And I want to hear a little bit of your story of where you're from and how you got to Grace College as a student.
Sure. Thanks for having us. I grew up in Brazil, South America. My parents were missionaries there with what is now Ethnos 360. At the time, it was called New Tribes Mission.
Sure.
They were teachers at an MK school. So I grew up on a school base on the banks of the Amazon River. Just about a couple-hour boat ride downriver from the city of Manaus. About 1,000 miles of jungle in every direction.
Wow.
I grew up there until I was 18, was born and raised there. Came back to the U.S. to a Bible school run by New Tribes up in Waukesha, Wisconsin. After graduating from there, I realized I really wanted to pursue more education, specifically science and secondary education. So I was looking around for a school that would teach. I had a good science program and a good education program, and also was a liberal arts school. That was something that was important to me at the time. So kind of Christian college with a liberal arts college with a good science and education program.
Why the liberal arts part? I mean, I get the other two, but that's, why was that important?
Yeah. That was always just something that I was passionate about. Even growing up, the school I went to, even though it was a small, missionary school in the Amazon jungle, the staff there did a great job of doing everything they could to bring a whole education experience. So they had us involved in choir, in drama, in athletics, shop classes, art classes, photography. They would bring in everything they could to create just a whole education experience across all disciplines. So I found that kind of stimulated just a curiosity about a lot of things. And so there was an attraction there to a liberal arts education because you get to explore a lot of things.
and we'll get to that curiosity part here again in the story a little bit later on. And while here, you met your wife here, right, as well?
I did.
And she's she was from Austria, is that correct? Okay. Missionary kid as well?
So her parents were missionaries with Child Evangelism Fellowship. So it's kind of funny. We always joke because I was swinging on vines in the jungle while she was transiting Vienna, a city of 1.2 million, on subways and going to public schools and all that. So we had very different physical experiences growing up, but we had a lot of common spiritual and sort of philosophical connection.
Gotcha.
So, yep.
And keeping with the theme of missionary kid from a different country, you grew up in Germany, right, Chris?
Correct, yep.
Okay. And tell us a little bit about your family background and how you got to Grace College.
Yeah, so my parents were missionaries as well, with then GBIM, now Encompass.
Yes.
And I was born in Stuttgart, south of Germany, and raised in a smaller town about 30 minutes outside of Stuttgart, called Schwäbisch Gmünd. And
say that again?
Schwäbisch Gmünd.
Wow, okay. Try that one 5 times fast.
Yeah, and so I came to Grace on the heels of really good friends growing up, the Pappases, also missionary kids. So there was, my parents went to Grace, met at Grace, so it was familiar enough, and had a graphic design program that I was really interested in. Didn't require portfolio for entry, so that was a big plus since I didn't have any formal training or a portfolio at that point. So came to Grace in, I think it was 2001. Don't quote me on that. And that's how I ended up in Beta.
And Beta, okay, there we go. And do you have the Beta experience in common?
I didn't because I transferred in.
Okay.
I already had 2 years of college elsewhere, so I transferred in and went straight to Gamma C at the time, which was a upperclassman.
The upgrade, all right.
Yeah, that was the upgrade.
Why graphic design? You kind of mentioned not having a portfolio, so it wasn't something you were doing necessarily a lot of previously. So what drew you towards design?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm trying to remember back. I know I had 2 or 3 really good friends that I went to school with that they all ended up going into some sort of a design or illustration related field. So I had close friends that did that. It was very interesting to me. At the time, if I'm remembering correctly, I actually wanted to be an illustrator for Disney. That was kind of the end goal there. So I did double major in illustration and graphic design. But as I got into it, the graphic design was more interesting to me. It turns out it's not as difficult to make money as a designer compared to what an illustrator would have to do. I also was a better designer than I was illustrator, so it made sense.
Well, let's get into the Cable Bullet story a little bit. And thanks for wearing the shirt and repping over there, Dan. Like Chris has talked to me about getting a tattoo. It's the Cable Bullet tattoo to go on the other arm, maybe? No?
What if you ever rebrand?
Yeah, what if you rebrand?
It's painful, right?
Yes.
It's too permanent. Way too permanent.
You mentioned kind of just sort of having this, I don't know, creative drive, like problem solving sort of mentality, and that's even what interested you in the liberal arts is the broadness of it, the exploration, which somewhat goes into the Cable Bullet, design and what you put together there. But talk a little bit about your career and how your career started, and then how that got you to the point of designing a railing system.
I had worked my way through college in construction. Okay, got to pay those tuition bills, and got a degree, secondary education, biology and chemistry. So high school science teacher, essentially, right? Yeah. Taught for a couple years in Hawaii at a Christian school there, but Christian school salaries, you kind of have to supplement a little, right? So we're doing construction on the side as well there. Enjoyed the experience, loved teaching, but realized that the salary there, living in Hawaii, this was not a permanent long-term scenario. So we came back to Indiana, and I thought, I also really like biology. Let's explore the medical field, right? Worked in an ER to get some experience to see if this was all right. Love science. Love biology, do not like hospitals. So figured a career in medicine was not really a good plan. So I'm kind of scratching my head thinking, well, now what? And I kept thinking, I really like construction. I keep coming back to this. I was doing construction on the side while I was working at the ER. It's like I keep doing this. So why not? Why not try it? I like it. I know I like it. So January of '98, not a great time to start, middle of winter, but hey, we started a construction business, and I just hung out my shingle and started remodeling, and grew the business through remodeling and into new home construction. And a few years in, when would that been? 08 maybe, somewhere in there.
So you'd had the business for about 10 years. Yeah. Had the business for a while and did a project that called for cable railing. And it was a big project, a lot of detail to it. And what was available at the time was either extremely expensive or very cumbersome to order, very cumbersome to use, not particularly aesthetically pleasing. And I liked the concept, but thought,
you got to be able to do this better. There's got to be a better way to do this, basically. So at that point, I started tinkering around in the back of my garage and kind of the proverbial nights and weekends, trying stuff. Had a little end mill machine, started making stuff, see what would work, tested it, tried it again, refined it. Started going to some local machine shops to have them make small batches for just jobs that I had going. And then finally got to a point I thought, yeah, I think we've got something here. I think there's something here that'll go.
Wow.
So that was that.
And you still had and you still have some of your home building work as well, right? Which is called
Inglenook.
Inglenook, that's right. And I've been to your home, and it's beautifully designed. And you've designed a tiny home that was on which show was that on?
That was HGTV's Tiny House.
That's right.
Big Living, I think it's called.
Yeah. So you can check out the home building side of things as well. But then the cabling thing, it became a thing unto its own. And when did Cable Bullet, which wasn't called Cable Bullet at the time, when did that officially launch as like a business?
What was that date? Do you remember?
I'm
not real good with
Ish,
dates.
around.
I think it was April. It was late April, 2015 or 16.
Okay. And Chris, when did you enter the picture and get engaged with the company? And he was doing a bunch of tinkering in his garage to build it, and then you began doing a bunch of running the business out of your garage. How did you get engaged in the company?
So, I knew of Marla while I was a student at Grace. She was involved with Mu Kappa, I think it was.
In fact, I think we were talking about her office was in this building for a while. Yeah.
And my wife, Christy, was doing her transition to teaching at Grace, and Marla sat on I want to call it a review board, but that's not what it is. I think it was like a final project.
Sure.
And for her teaching license, Marla happened to be there. We were looking for a rental at the time. You happened to have one on 14th Street that was open.
That's right.
They rented it to somebody else because we took an extra 2 weeks, I think it was, because we were in between jobs. We weren't sure if we were going to be in the area, and it was a hot commodity. But we really liked the house.
I don't hear any bitterness there.
No. It some tears at the time, but we liked the house so much that we decided to stick it out in our current residence, save up, and then I think it was 2 years later, Dan designed and built our house. So I don't think I came on board with Cable Bullet. You had been tinkering on it for a few years, and then I don't know how many years, but I know it was a few. We went to that one trade show in Chicago together just to kind of, mainly for me to get a feel for what was out there.
Yeah.
But it was pretty informal at the time. And then after we launched the business in 2016, we all pitched in, but all still had our full-time gigs elsewhere.
Yeah.
So I was still at Sailrite in Columbia City doing their marketing work. And so it was nights and weekends for, I'm terrible with dates. I know it was like 2 years.
Where you're just sort of doing it out of on the margins, out of your home. I mean, it was a side business. It was a side gig.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you redesigned the product, I think, once or twice in that first year. And we took a full year to work with a lot of local contractors. Dan was tweaking the design based on feedback. We didn't launch the website. I think it was the business started in 2015. The website launched in 2016.
Okay.
And that slow start ended up being a really big blessing in disguise because I think you ironed out a lot of the kinks in that year. And so I think we had a much better start in 2016, official start outside of Warsaw because of it. So
when did you become then a full-time employee of Cable Bullet? And when did you see, sort of it's already a meteoric rise in a sense, like 2016 to where we are today, 5 years later. when did you really see things kind of take off? What was some of those moments you look back on like, wow, God, you really have something going here? And either one of you can answer that question. Might be different for each of you.
Yeah.
Oh, when would that have been?
Sure. I mean, just when you're like, we really have caught a tiger by the tail here. This is a like we could make a living off of this. We might actually employ people. Where it's this is a real business.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I remember it seemed like I guess from the beginning, it always felt like this had a lot of potential. So that part wasn't a surprise. There was what we call, I think it's in German, a Marktlücke, and basically a hole in the market, right?
Yeah.
It was like it was clearly looking at the market. It was like, this should work. This clearly has what it needs. There's this big hole. This fills it. This should work. Basically, it's there to be messed up. If we don't. So that wasn't. I guess that part wasn't. It was more working out all the little, getting the manufacturing lined up, getting your supply chain right, getting the kinks worked out, getting the website built. It's 1,000 little steps. Like you can always see, yeah, we can get there. It's just it's a lot of running to get there.
Well, and that's a great. I mean, that right there is just a great point to sit on. Is like, it's having the vision, having an idea, but oftentimes the real work is in the execution, and the real success is in the 1,000 little things that it takes to get from an idea here to product that gets put up at people's houses and in people's businesses. And I mean, I think sometimes we have students here at Grace who are in entrepreneurship, right? And they might have a great idea, but it's good to recognize that there are 1,000 steps that have to take place that aren't always the most fun or easy, but are the necessary ingredients. The cable bullet itself, that's really cool to look at and see, but it's the 1,000 steps to get there.
Yeah. It did take off pretty quickly. Like we consistently had trouble keeping up with demand. So it felt like, I remember it started selling, first thousands of dollars a month and tens of thousands of dollars a month pretty quickly. And it was like, okay, we're going back to our manufacturers pretty quickly saying, we need more, we need more.
Yeah, a lot of daily trips
Right.
for a few seasons there where it was
Yeah.
going and picking off the machine what they had ready, bringing it back, boxing it up.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to have, Dan, I'm going to have you really quick. I should have done this earlier, but I'm going to have you actually explain what it is that you created. And then Chris, I'll have you talk about the current state of the company. Like what's it like now? Where are you at? Who do you have? Kind of what's the company like? But tell us exactly, what is Cable Bullet?
The core technology?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
That's a fancy way to say it. Core technology, yes.
All your cable railing that's out there, you need some way of tightening the cable, keeping it tight, and adjusting it, okay? So the cable itself will expand and contract a little bit and move, and you have to be able to tighten it, and you can't just tighten it by hand. You can't just pull it tight. That won't work. It's steel. Most of the systems out there involve some sort of a turnbuckle. Imagine your old screen door with the diagonal rods and the bolt in the middle that turns them. It's a turnbuckle. So some of the systems use something like that. Some of them use a threaded rod with a nut on the back that pulls it through. Those have limitations. They tend to be bulky, not particularly beautiful. So what we were looking for in this product was to create something that would be simple. So a lot of the systems out there, they have fixed end and flexible and tensioning ends, and they have lefts and rights and slopes and straights. And it gets cumbersome to order, cumbersome to use and install because you're having to switch from one system to another. So what we're really looking for here is something that would work to tighten cable, hold it tight, make it easy to retighten if you needed to, and would do it consistently across any application so that you could have one core product that you could use in a whole variety of ways. So it's kind of like giving you the ink to draw with, right? You can create all kinds of things with it because this works. So the core technology then, the breakthrough was to use a little tiny set screw from the front that runs parallel to the cable and captures a little lobed washer that hangs down, and it pushes against that and tightens it up from the front, which is a little different than anyone else out there is doing it. Most of them tighten from the back or they're concentric, which means they don't work real well on sloped applications. So this allows you to come off to the side, tighten it up, and it's always accessible, but it's very discreet. The same approach works for left side, right side, straight, sloped, doesn't matter. It works in every application. So.
And you were able to get a patent on the technology as well, which is certainly a very valuable thing. And another one of those 1,000 steps. There was probably 1,000 steps to get the patent amidst the 1,000 steps. So congratulations on that as well. Chris, give us a scope of the current company as it's put together. How many employees do you have? Location, kind of who buys your product, and how your company works and is set up right now.
So we opted early on to do, and Dan alluded to this, all of our machining, fabrication, just the manufacturing in general is done offsite. So we work in partnership with a number of local machine shops to make all of our products. We do have some specialty components that come from the West Coast and a few tools that we have to import. But for the most part, everything's made locally. And that's worked really well for us. Bit of a price concession there, but the quality, the consistency, being able to drive 20 minutes and talk to the people that are working on the lines is well worth the trade-off. So we're committed to that business model, which leaves us in a position where we're functioning as the seller and the distributor. So we sell direct. And we've identified that installers, be they homeowners or contractors, professional builders, that's kind of our sweet spot in terms of customer base. So we sell direct, and then we do all of the quality control, the light kitting, you would call it, like some light assembly, and then shipping out of our location here in Warsaw. So,
and your location here in Warsaw, you've been in for 2 years now, approximately, or not quite?
A little over a year.
Little over a year. Yep.
Well,
Okay.
About a year. Yep. Real close.
Yeah,
And Dan, you designed that facility as well, and it's beautiful. If anybody wants to check out just the facility itself, it's right next to Noah, which I think is a real strategic location move. If I were to choose, I'd be having some sushi every day, having a facility, and it's beautiful. And in the Grace Story magazine, you can see some of those photos as well, and it's really neat. How many employees do you currently have?
I want to say it's 18 or 19. I might be off.
And I think we kind of counted up approximately half of those are Grace College grads, which,
yes.
If you read the story, you'll see some of the first ones were Grace College grads, and you've continued to...
Or married to a Grace grad.
Yeah, yes, or married to one, or somehow there's a lot of overlap, which is really neat as well. And we got you all engaged. Thank you for generously helping us out with a facility that's about to open here in just a few days. The new Alpha
Dining.
Dining.
Nicer than it was in 2004.
That's right. Yeah, Alpha Dining is going to look a little bit better than it did a couple years ago when you guys were here. But as many know, we've done about a $5 million renovation and added on to Alpha. And one of the things we've added is an outdoor eating space. And we noticed that it called for railing, and we said, well, we think we know some people. And you all generously contributed, and so the railing for the outside eating, which is really one of the first things you see, will be cable bullet railing. And so I think you've put the posts in, right? And today may be the day when we get the railing up. Is that correct? So you'll be over there and actually putting the product in, and those, if anybody wants to see up close how it actually all works, the design you've put together, come check it out at Alpha. So thank you so much for making that a reality for us. Students will be enjoying that, and I think it's just really neat that we get to tell them your story as a part of it, to say, hey, this is what a couple Grace College alums have done together and are making a difference in the world through their entrepreneurship, through their great ideas, through their great design, and wow, go and do likewise. So thank you. And I appreciate you being here today and sharing your story. And thank you for your generosity and connection to Grace over the years. And thanks to all of you for listening to the Grace Story podcast. Music was produced and written by Dr. Wally Brath, Assistant Professor of Music here at Grace. And thanks to our co-producers, Rick and Chingiz. And if you could share and like and post this wherever you find it from, we would be so appreciative. Until next time, live your best Grace story today.